Hi guys, welcome to another Divi theme video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. We've got another video in our series of Divi for beginners here, and you can find the link to that playlist down below. Today we're going to look at the awesome Divi text module. Now believe it or not, that's a text module, 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 and this animated button there as a text module. Here are just a few examples of some of the things you can do with it. It's a really versatile little module and great fun to use. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the visual builder. Let's just delete this and we'll start from scratch. I'm going to add a new row. I'm going to add 3 columns to my row. Funny enough, we're going to use a text module right down at the bottom. These are all in alphabetical order. There it is. And let's just make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. And that's a basic text module right there. It puts some content in. Obviously, you're going to want to put your own content in there. And of course, once you've got content in there, you can go over to the Design tab, or you can just roll over the text that's in there. It'll take you straight to the text. And you can style the text however you want. By default, it's on the text itself, but you can also style any links you've got in there, and bullet lists, and comments, or block quotes. I'm going to leave it right on the regular text right there. Of course, you can choose any font you wish. Divi's got a crazy amount of font. Just click on that. To audition one, just roll over it. It'll give you an example. I'm going to leave mine on the default today. But for all of these, you can have different fonts and different styles if you wish. Of course, down here, we can set the text font weight. Depending on what font you're using, you'll have various different options here. Again, I'm going to leave it on the regular. Styles, you've got italicized, capitalized, upper and lower capitals, underline, and strike through if you wish. I'm going to take those off, leave it just how it is. And of course, you've got your text color here. Make it any color you want. If you click on the 3 little dots down here, it'll give you a little color palette. And if you choose a color, you can click on that color and you can make it any color you want within the spectrum. Put in a hex code or an RGBA, whatever works for you. When you're happy, just roll back. If you want it to revert to how it was, just use this undo arrow right there. And of course, you can set the text size here to anything you want. You can slide, type in a value, and increment up and down with the little arrows there if you want to. Letter spacing, obviously, space between the letters. Text line height, funnily enough, is the space between the lines of text there. And as with most things Divi, if you don't like what you've done, simply select it, delete it, it'll go back to the default for you. You can add text shadow if you want here on small text. It tends to make it look blurry to me, but that's entirely up to you. I'd rather use it on larger text. Let's take that off. Self-explanatory text alignment. You've got left align, center align, right align, and justified, which will fill up the available space. Let's leave this on center aligned. Text color itself, well, it's set to dark. If you just want to flip it from dark to light, this will do all the text, whether you've got headings or not. It's a quick way of doing things. If I flip it to light, it's going to kind of disappear in the background there because it's white on white. Let's leave it back on dark. We don't have any headings. I'll come back to that in a second when we add a heading. Sizing and spacing, I'll come back to that, and borders and box shadows and things when we put a background in. So let's go add a heading to this. Let's pop back to our content, back to the text itself, and let's make that your content goes here, a heading. So I'm going to delete the little full stop on the end there. I'm going to hit my return key to push the other stuff down. I'm going to select it, and let's make it perhaps a heading 3. Once you've got a heading in there, you can edit it separately from your body text. There's the body text. You'll notice these have got paintbrushes attached to them. So go to the thing you want to edit, our heading right here. If you hit the paintbrush that's attached to it, it takes you straight to the design for that. It's an H3. And again, you can change the text. Let's make the font weight perhaps semi-bold. and any other of these settings separately for your text. Any of these words or any of these titles you can make into a link. If we go back to our text here, by simply selecting it, this is what they call a WYSIWYG text editor. It's common to all WordPress sites. If you want to make your title into a link, select it, hit the little link icon there. Put the URL where you want to take them. I'll just put a hashtag in for a placeholder. I've got no real URL there. It's going to display that text. That's what we want. Target none means it'll open in this window. If you linking off-site to somebody else's site, it's good practice to open it in a new window. That way your site's going to stay open. When you're happy, just hit OK. And you can do that for any words here as well. So same thing, just go in there and hit the link. I'm not going to link that, that's fine. And of course, once you've got that heading in there, like we mentioned before, it's a link. If you wanted to change your link colors, just go back into the text. There's the link colors there. Let's perhaps make it a blue. Been using that default blue on our site. And let's capitalize it for a bit of fun. Great. Of course, it's going to give you the option to add images as well, and that's what we did with one of our other ones just now. If we go back into the content and into our text, let's get rid of that title. Unless you want to keep it there, that's fine. You can have it images and titles. You just don't want to use too much space up. Put your cursor where you want to actually add your images. Hit the add media. Yeah, let's pop this fella in perhaps. If we roll down, you can actually choose the size that you want to put in there. And it's a good idea not to make it any bigger than you actually need. 300 wide by 171 will probably work. I don't want those large or full size ones there, so let's pop that one in. And as you can see, it's put it on the top there. And you can align your images once you've got them in there by just clicking on the image and hitting the align button. If you want to align it left, you can do. See the writing's wrapping around it there. Center's fine for me. And of course, you can align it right. And if you hit the justify, it's going to try and stretch it across, but we're missing a bit here because the actual image size itself is just slightly too small. Now I'll show you a little trick that'll keep it full width if that's what you want on all devices here. If we flip over to our text tab right here, we've got the HTML. And once we're in here, don't freak out if it does look a bit scary, but it really isn't. If you want to make sure that that image fills the whole of the available space, which is the column it's in there, where it says width there, change it from 300 to 100 and the % sign. And that way, whatever device it's going to be on, it's going to fill that available space there. If we flip back to the visual again now, if you want to, of course, you can link this by just selecting it and adding a link. I'm not going to link mine today. And we turned this into a little card before. I think let's just have a little less text in there for this particular example. And I added a background under content here. Background's always under content. If we roll down, there it is. And let's give it that 2424 dark that I've been using. There it is. It looks like we need to turn that text white and just give it a little space on the bottom. Very easy to do. First things first, we'll turn it white. We can hit the little paintbrush again. Turn that white. Now I want to give it a little bit more space on the bottom, so let's go out. We'll close the text tab. We've got spacing down here, as I mentioned before. I only want to add a bit to the bottom, so let's perhaps add 30 pixels to the bottom. Maybe too much, a little bit too much. Let's take it 20. Obviously, you do what works for you. We've got a little card there. To make it more like a card, we can go into border at the bottom there. Let's give it maybe 10 pixels rounded corners. You see this quite a lot, and that works nicely for me. Of course, you can add a border down below if you want to. You can do all at once, top, right, bottom, left separately. Just give it a width that you want it. If I give it 3 pixels, you'll find it hard to see there because it's black, but if I change that to perhaps a red, you can see it around there. I probably wouldn't use a red on mine, but gives you the idea, of course. While we've got a border in there, if you want to, you can add a bit of box shadow on the bottom, just down below. It's great for lifting things off the page slightly. Just gives it that sort of 3D effect. I'm happy to have it just as it was. Let's take that border off also. Take the border off, just take the width away. Select and delete. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's add one perhaps that's got my logo and then a bit of content, and we can make it have a clickable button or something that looks like a button at least. Let's do that. I'm going to save this. I'm going to add a new text module. Obviously I've got no real content, so I'm going to delete a bit of this. That's fine. If I move this out of the way, you might be able to see a little bit better. And perhaps I want to put my logo on the top. So I'm scooting that down. I'm going to put my cursor where I want to put the image. I'm going to add media. And I think I've got a colored version. There it is. I'm going to add that. You can use a smaller if you want. I'm going to actually use that. I think that'll work fine for this. There it is right there. Now if you want to make it smaller, firstly I want to put it in the middle. In fact, I'm going to put all this text in the middle simply by going to design and the text. I'm going to roll down. I'm going to pop it all in the middle. Fantastic. That's centralized the logo and the text itself. Great. Well, let's go back. That logo is a bit too big for me. So what I can do in here, we don't have to go back into the text tab. We can actually just click on the logo itself, drag one of the corners in, drag it down till it's sort of the size that you want it. That's okay. Maybe a little bit less. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to add a little button to this that people can click on. So I'm going to go down. This is slightly more than beginner stuff. This is a little advanced, but it's a really handy thing to know. Let's say click here, how original. And as you can see, it's right there. As we're going to have this as a button, we want to put a link in to take people somewhere. So let's select it, hit our little link tab right there. Put in the URL of what you want or where you want people to go when they click on it. And I'm going to just go OK. Great. So how do we turn it from that, which will actually work fine, into something that looks like a button? Once we made it a link, I'm actually going to turn it into perhaps a heading 4. And the reason I'm doing that is when we flip over now to our little text tab, and like I said, this is slightly more than beginner's stuff, but it's really handy to know. Because I've put an H4, it's put some H4 tags either side of it. I can go put my cursor right next to that H4 there, put a little space in there, write the word style equals and some inverted commas. Inside those inverted commas we can write some CSS and make that look any way we want. So put your cursor in between the two inverted commas there. First thing I want to do is give it a background, so I'm going to say background, colon, and the color you want. You can use a hex color, RGB. I'm just going to say orange. That's what I've been using for my buttons on this site. As you can see, that's popped an orange background in there. I kind of want to shrink that down. I don't want it to be full width. So after the orange, and you need to do this after every line of code, I'm going to put a semicolon. Make sure you put a semicolon there or it won't read the next line. I'm actually going to shrink that down by giving it a width. So I'm going to say width, width, and then another colon. Let's make it perhaps 150 pixels. I think that's what I used before, 150px. And as you can see, that shrunk that down. I'm going to add a bit of padding to make it look more like a button. That it's a little too squished up at the top. So I'm going to put a colon. I'm going to say padding. I'm going to go for 10 pix, top and bottom, 10 pixels. You can do these separate if you want, top and bottom. And 20 pixels, 20px. I've just put a gap, 20 and px bottom. I think that works for me. It's got 10 pixels top and bottom, 20 pixels left and right. But of course I kind of want it in the middle, and we'll do that in a second. I want it to have slightly round corners like the rest of our button. So after our last entry, remember I'm going to put a semicolon. I'm going to say border radius, BORDER dash radius, colon, and perhaps 10 pixels, maybe a little bit too much. Well, let's make it a round button like our default. So I'm going to make it 50 pixels. That'll give it nice round corners there. 50px, semicolon. Great. I don't think that text stands out enough for me being that sort of grey colour. Let's turn it black. And that's really easy. Colour, colon. You can just write black, or I happen to know the hex for black is 000 or hashtag 000. That works for me. Great. But I also want it in the middle, as I mentioned before, so we can say margin auto. And like I say, don't worry, this code I'll put all down below for anybody that just wants to copy and paste it and add it and make it your own. So I'm going to say margin, auto. And that shot it in the middle. But I think I want a bit more of a gap there between the writing that's above it and the button itself. So we can just add one more line of code to sort that out and we're done. Semicolon. And I'm going to say margin top, margin dash top, colon. Let's give it maybe 20 px, 20 px. And there we have it. Your last one you don't really need to put a semicolon after. It's a good idea to just chuck one in there for habit. And I think with our other one we just popped a little board around this and gave it a bit of spacing. Really easy to do. We'll go over to our design. If we put the board around first, you'll be able to see what's going on. I'm going to use all four. I'm just going to put a skinny one on there. Just 1 pixel. As you can see, it's a little bit tight round of everything there. I think I want to give it rounded corners a bit like we used perhaps here. So let's give it 10 pixels. Just make sure that change checked. It'll do all four at once. If you want to uncheck it, you can get some crazy things going on. If that's what floats your boat, then that's fine. But I like mine to be just regular. I think I used 10 pixels on the last one. That'll work for me. And let's just give it a bit of breathing room with a bit of padding. We'll close up the border. Spacing's just above. You'll always find padding and margin in there. And let's try 20 pixel round. Just put in the 20, it'll put in the pix. Hit the chain, it'll do the opposite side. And we could do the same for left and right. It really doesn't need that much left and right. Let's maybe 10 left and right. That'll work fine. And if you want it, you chuck a bit of box shadow on the bottom. And there's a nice little card type thing, a bit like this one, but we've got something that looks like a call to action button there. And as it's a link, of course, it'll work just like a button too. Now our last one we did was just a button with an animated background. And again, that was just a text module, really easy to do. Let's save the changes on this one. We'll add a new text module over here. Of course, you could just add a button if you wanted to, but I'm just trying to show the versatility of this text module. Put in what you want your button to say. And the good thing about doing it with the text module, you can have 2 lines in your button if you want to. And you could add a little icon image even if you wanted to. Put in whatever it was. I think I just used that. Might want to spell things right. And let's move this back over here so you can see what's going on. Obviously, it's just put that text in there, which is absolutely fine to me. I'm going to go over to my design tab, to the general text. I'm just going to pop that in the middle. Once in the text, I'll roll down. There's the alignment. Fantastic. Okay, to make this happen, it's a simple animation. If we go over to our advanced and down to our custom CSS here, in the freeform CSS, they've literally just added this tab a few months ago, and it's really handy. I used to have to use a code module separately for this, but you can write complex CSS here, which is fantastic. And they've also got an AI. You can click on their AI. It's free at first, and up to a certain amount, then you have to pay on it. I'm going to keep this cheap by doing it myself, but do explore that. It's great. It's free at first. So I'm going to give this a class name first. All class names have a dot or a period in front, and give it what you want to call it. I'm going to say CCH, that's my shorthand for color change. Wants to be unique, that name. And we can open and close some curly brackets. Inside, we can tell it what we want it to do. Basically, I want this to be an animation. So I'm going to say animation. If you're interested in CSS, take a look at our simple CSS playlist. We go through a lot of these things there. So I'm going to say animation, colon. I've got to give our animation a name. I'm going to call it BRED. For blue to red. Again, call it what you want, but it does need to be a unique name. I'm going to have it running over 5 seconds. And I want it to keep going and going and going. So I'm going to say infinite. Great. Now we need to create that animation. We're going to use keyframes to do this today. So if I go down, I'm going to say @ sign, keyframes. The name that we gave it, which is bred basically, BRED. Blue to red. Then we can open and close more curly brackets, and we can tell it exactly what we want it to do. So at 0%, that's basically when the page loads, 0%, or second 1 of our 5 seconds there. Open and close some more curly brackets. I'm going to say background, colon, blue. Now you won't see anything happen over here until I assign that module this class name. I also want it to be blue when it reaches 100%, so I'm going to put a comma after that 0% and add 100% also. So at 0 and 100% it's going to be blue. Now I'm going to drop down, say halfway along 50%, which is basically the 2.5 second point, 50%. We'll open and close some more curly brackets. Inside I'm going to say background, red. Great. To make this happen, let's copy that class name without the dot or the period. When you write it, it's got to have a dot. When you assign it, it doesn't have to have that dot. So it's just CCH, copied it, or just write it in. Close up your custom CSS right here. In CSS ID and classes above, it's a class name, so we need to put it in a class, not the ID. As you can see, it's added that animated background. That's okay, but it doesn't really look much like a button to me. So let's style it a bit more. I think I need that writing perhaps a little bit bigger, and also the button itself a little less in size. Easy, we can do that all in the design tab, no more coding involved. It's regular text. I think I'm going to bring it up in size. I want to make it white in color. That's a little easier to see. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. Maybe something like that. Obviously, you style yours exactly how you want. You use any font and combination just like anything else. I want to give it a bit more spacing around so it's a little bit deeper, and I'm also going to give it those rounded corners perhaps that we had on this button right here. And again, this is all simple, no coding involved. If I close up the text, we'll do it in order now here. Sizing is next. I'll bring it down to the size that I want it. Something like that. I'm going to align it in the middle of the column so it stays there all the time. I'm going to close up sizing there. I'm going to go into spacing down below to make it a bit taller. We don't need to do left and right because we've given it a width there, but to make it taller, let's give it perhaps 15 on the top, maybe too much. It's entirely up to you. Let's give it 10. That's what we did with our other button. That'll work for me. So we've got 10 top and bottom. I just hit the chain there. And if we roll down, we can give it those nice rounded corners by giving it 50 with the chain checked again. That's pretty much all there is to it. If you want to give it a border, you can do. If you want to give it some box shadow, just lift it off the page a bit, you can do that also. If you actually wanted to stop the animation when they hover over it and perhaps have it, let's have it change to orange maybe when they stop the animation, you can do that again if we go back into our custom CSS here. I'm going to copy that class name. Like I say, this is slightly more than beginner's stuff, but it's handy to know. I'm going to paste it down below, right after that H with no gap. I'm going to put a colon and the word hover, and we can have a completely different set of values for our hover state. Let's open and close some curly brackets here. And in between, I'm going to say animation, colon, and the word none to stop it. And I actually want the background color to be orange, I think we decided. So I'm going to drop down and say background, orange. Now I'm not sure if that white's going to work very well on the orange. What did we use on our other button there? We could change the color to black of the text there. So let's try that. Let's say color, colon, black. Good. That should work. Don't know if it'll do it on the back end. Yeah, it's done it. Okay. That white actually works fine, and the black is not working there. So to make things work with CSS that sometimes don't work, you have to override the defaults by using important, which is exclamation mark important. Don't like to use that, but sometimes you have to force the issue. There we go, it's worked fine there. Great, and like I say, I'll put this down below for anybody who wants to use it. Just make it your own. Very easy to do. Don't worry about CSS. You can't mess up your site with it. If you don't like something you've done, simply select it, delete it. It'll go back to how it was. So let's save the changes here. Oh, actually I had one more, didn't I? I had one more text module where we flip the text to an image. Let's quickly do that. This video is going on a bit. I apologize for that. But again, this is really easy. There's no coding involved in this one, but it's a handy one to know. So let's throw a quick text module in there. I'll try and do this fairly quickly. I'm not going to give it a heading, but I just want to separate one of the words. Suffering from fat finger today. Now I'm just going to make that bold. I'm not going to change it into heading because that'll affect when we make this text disappear. I'm going to go over to our design now. I'm going to pop all that text in the middle. Roll down. Text alignment. Let's give this thing a background. Always find background under content, as we mentioned. Background. We'll make it the default blue that we've been using. Of course, that text doesn't really stand out now, so if we go into the text, I'm going to change it to white. Makes it a little easier to read. We need to give it a bit of spacing all around. It's kind of smushed up against the sides there. We know how to do that down in spacing with padding. Let's perhaps give it 20 pixels all around. And this is entirely up to you, obviously, how you make yours look. You're really trying to make it the size or space of the image that you want to show behind it. And we've got a whole playlist on hover effects. This is a very simple version. We're just doing everything within the module itself today. So we've got that initially, but when they hover over it, I want this text to all disappear, the background to disappear, and perhaps have an image pop in. To do that, back to our content where it's background again. This is common to all Divi modules. If you roll over the dart writing within a module, you'll see these little icons appear there. If there's a little arrow, we can create a hover effect. We can have completely different settings for desktop when the mouse is not on it. We'll leave it just like that. And hover when the mouse is on it. Obviously, you can reverse this, do this the other way around if you want to see the picture first. So when they hover on it, I'm not going to have any background. I want to have an image. So I'm going to click on image over here. We've got color, gradient, image, background video, background pattern, or background mask. Look at our backgrounds video. You can combine these to make some crazy things. You really can. We did a whole video on that. I'm going to add a background image. Choose whatever image you want. We'll pop it in the background there. And when they see the image, I really don't want it to see the text. So if we go back to our text now, over the design and text color, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hover over the dart writing, hit the little arrow. On desktop, I'm happy with it to be like that. When they hover over it, I'm going to have that text disappear. And the easiest way to do that is just make the color transparent. Gone. And they're just left with the image. You can actually slow this down or speed it up if you want to over in advanced. This is common again to all modules. If we go down to transitions, by default it puts in 300 milliseconds, which is just under a third of a second. If you want to slow it down or even speed it up, you can do so here. Let's make it almost 3/4 of a second or even 3/4 of a second. Don't want any delay, want it to happen as soon as their mouse hits it. I'm going to use ease in, ease out. They're all pretty similar. That's my go-to for my hover effects. Great. Well, that should work for us. Let's save everything. Make sure this is all going to work on the front end. We'll go down, hit the little purple button, save draft or publish if you're ready. And let's exit the Visual Builder. Let's roll on down. And there we have it. As our little card one. Here's the one we added that little button to. As you can see, it's a hand icon when we click on the button there because it's got a link on it, and our logo. You can add link to the logo too. There's that little animated background button. Those are great for getting people's eyeballs on things very quickly. And when we hover over it, it's stopped and changed the color of the text there. When we take it off, it's going to reanimate. Here's our little text module that should fade into a little image and have the text disappear when we hover over it. Fantastic. Now the actual background change there is pretty much instant, and it's taking that 3/4 of a second to fade out that text there. That works fine for me. Like I say, take a look at our hover images playlist. We do this when we put the image in the background and use the module to fade in and out of it. You can get a smoother transition between the text module and the image by doing it that way, but this works too. I just wanted to do it all within the text image there. So there you go, guys. I'm sorry this took so long, but I've just touched on a few of the things you can do with the awesome Divi text module. Have fun with it, get creative, you can get some fantastic results. So I hope you enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, comment, share and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I'll do my best to answer them for you or make a little demo video like this one. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.